So if you're thinking of moving to Olympia, there is a lot you need to know, and most people don't know necessarily the bad things. We've lived here for a long time, so it combined like 20 or 30 years. So let's be clear, these are actually assumptions people make about the area. Like they think this thing is awesome when maybe it's not so awesome. So the first thing for me is that people think that their expectation is that Olympia has this thriving food scene, right? Like there's all these great restaurants and everything, and there's some good ones, but we definitely need to talk about it because it lacks compared to a lot of the cities in America.
So what I've noticed when some of my clients move here, we get some complaining happening.
Oh yeah.
And usually it's around the lack of spices. So if you're from the South, if you're, anywhere where they have good barbecue, like you may be missing home a little bit when it comes to the food variety in Olympia.
Yeah, so Southern food, barbecue food. If you think just because we're next to the Puget Sound that there's all these seafood restaurants that are so amazing, we got some good markets, but people that can actually cook good seafood, it's not that great,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's about an hour to get to Seattle from Olympia, so you have to travel quite a ways. Tacoma's got some great restaurants. There are a few in Olympia. I won't say there's none, but when it comes to like that spice level that you're looking for, if you're used to like really great Mexican food, it's tough to find.
So if you're looking for recommendations, be sure to check out the channel where we go way deeper on exact restaurants you could go to, because there are definitely ones that fill each bucket. Like there's a decent seafood place, there's a decent barbecue place. What we're talking about is in general, this is kind of a misaligned thing that people think they're going to come here and just have this thriving food scene, and it's not true.
Yeah, learn to cook your favorites before you leave your hometown. So another mistake that I think people have a misconception about is assuming that because Olympia is the capital city, that it's going to be like this big major urban development, and it's just not. Olympia is not Seattle. So what you see in the movies a lot of times is Seattle.
Sleepless in Seattle?
Seattle and Olympia are very different. Very different in size, very different in politics, very different in just like the culture itself. So don't assume Olympia is like Seattle.
Yeah, it's very artsy.
So even though it's a mistake to assume that Olympia is like Seattle, the upside is it's kind of like easy to navigate, if that makes sense. Like there's not a whole lot of a way to get lost.
Yeah.
Where in a big city you really can. So the upside to that is you can really walk just about anywhere if you live in Olympia.
Yeah, a lot of people get stressed out by one-way streets downtown because it's like, how many times do I got to circle the block to be able to park somewhere, right?
Right.
Not really the case in Olympia. There's very few one-way streets. But yeah, it's definitely quite a smaller, more kind of intimate vibe compared to Seattle.
Parking is free for the most part. Like you might have to put some quarters in here and there, but for the most part, parking's pretty easy.
Another huge common mistake is people think that Olympia, because it's a little bit of a smaller town, they think they're going to get small town prices when they're buying houses or when they're renting an apartment or a home. And the reality is it's about 10% more than the national average. So we do have a higher cost of living here.
So yeah, what I would say about that is the cost of living is usually directly correlated with the desirability of the area. And here, the desirability to live here is super high. Like it's a beautiful place to live. The weather's, I know we have a thing about weather, but like it's decent. Everything, when you put it on a scale, we come out towards the high end of the scale as far as people being satisfied with where they live. It's definitely clean here. That's the reputation that we have as far as like the greenery and
the trees.
Yes. So you have the mountain views and you have the water to wander around by. So there's, outdoor activities are great. So when you get on that walkability scale or that desirability scale, pricing tends to go up.
Well, and just let's be real. I mean, I've been to other areas of the country, the Midwest, and not knocking the Midwest, but when you come here, people say it's green and it's beautiful and this is an amazing place, right? So economics aside, we have the military base, which drives a ton of people into the area. We have the capital, which is obviously federal government. So people are coming here and there always will be, that stability with employment. And so that has created the situation where housing is desirable. A lot of the builders aren't really building tons and tons of property. It's really complicated to build in Washington from a land perspective and development standpoint. So the real estate's expensive. The rentals are expensive compared to what people are used to. So if you're coming from somewhere else, just be aware, that the average cost of a home as it stands right now is about $545,000 for the average house. Not that you can't get something for less, you definitely can. There's always solutions, and that's what we do for a living, is provide those solutions. There's condominiums, you can move a little further outside of the area. There's always those deals too. So there's ways around that, but in general, it does cost a little bit to live here.
Yeah, and I think that's a misconception for people, that they don't plan ahead and realize that, what I got where I came from isn't going to be exactly what I get when I get there. And also availability, same thing. There's so many people that want to live here, and our population is growing. It's not easy to just pop in and buy a house and get the biggest one and get a great deal. It's a little bit of work to get in here and get your needs met.
Oh, I could talk about the real estate forever, but it's the most boring thing unless you actually are moving or want to buy a house. Let's be real. Rent is expensive too, so just know that. But we're going to move on. And my biggest thing, and one of my biggest complaints, it's not a complaint now because I'm married, and when you get married, Chris Rock calls it, are you married and bored, or are you single and lonely, right? So I'm married and bored, but hopefully Jamie's not watching. This is not my wife, by the way.
You're just mean. You're mean.
That's how it goes. So thinking though, back then, right, I wanted Olympia to have a better just nightlife scene, and it's actually not bad. It is very fun if you go downtown, but there's only that's just downtown, right?
Like two choices.
We're talking about the surrounding area, so including Lacey and Tumwater and all those places. Those places do not have a lot to offer. You basically have a couple streets that you can walk in Olympia and go bar hopping, and there's not a lot of nightclubs per se. It's definitely a different world. So we have people move here and they come here and they're just they're deeply disappointed in the nightlife. It's the person that lived in LA or another big city, or have been to Vegas and been to a nightclub, right? That is not really here. You can go to Seattle for that a little bit, but even Seattle's not the best if you're used to Vegas, right?
You will not have this perfectly clean environment in downtown Olympia. It's just not. It's just like any other city. There is homelessness. There are things that need to be fixed. There are things that need to be cleaned up. So if you're coming here with this Pollyanna version of what Olympia looks like, you may want to do a little bit more research. And we're a mid-sized city. There are things, there's crime, there's stuff that needs to be fixed, and there are some homeless encampments that we are working on dealing with for sure as a community.
If you are moving from somewhere else, one of the things you need to realize when you come to Olympia, I hope you like the outdoors. I hope you are a homebody like my wife is. During the winter, there is not a lot of things to do. Everything has to be indoors, right? So we can go to the skate place, we can go to the movies, but there's only so many times we can do that. So you're constantly searching for things to do during the winter time when it's raining that are indoors. Okay, right?
Yeah, I always say this, if you have any desire to start a business and you're moving here and you want something to be thriving, figure out a way to get people in something inside that they can do, like a cornhole tournament championship inside some sort of building would probably do very well. Just something like that, where it's fun for kids and fun for adults and something they can do together. There's not a whole lot of that going on around here.
Yes, to Jessica's point, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a great business idea, please come here. We welcome you to create an indoor business. So a couple weeks ago, I took the kids to a place called Catapult Adventure Park in Lakewood. This is the perfect example of what I'm trying to explain, what we're trying to explain. There's a lack of these types of places. If you look online, this is just a big indoor fun zone for kids. Right? And there's not a lot of these places out there. So we're stuck again with the mall, the movies, and you have to really embrace the outdoors, which is really tough when it's 35 degrees and not snowing, which is cool, but 35 degrees and raining, which is not cool.
It's cold.
Yes.
It's not cool, it's cold. Yeah, and I think the other thing to embrace is just you're going to get wet. Like, people don't wander around here with umbrellas very often.
No,
You just gotta grow out of that and be like, it's fine, you're wet, it's cool. So as promised, the biggest mistake that I believe people make is to underestimate the weather. And by that, we just mean it is kind of gloomy. It's kind of cruddy, kind of crappy. You don't get to wear your best shoes, and if you do, they're gonna get ruined. Like, it's hard to be a shoe lover in this part of the country. It really is.
It could be gray for 30 days in a row without any sun, or just maybe a couple of sun breaks. That's what drives people insane that are from California or from Arizona or from someplace, Florida, someplace where it's always sunny. They come here, and I've literally helped people come here and then move after a year because they feel like they're getting the seasonal affective disorder because they're used to getting more sunlight. It's not that the weather is extreme or bad. It's just that during those months, we got a lot of periods of days and weeks in a row where it's gray. So if you're smart and you live in Washington, and once you move here, this is what you should do. You should always plan a vacation in January, February, or March, and go somewhere sunny.
So if you need more information about Olympia, you're looking to come visit, or you think you might want to move here, check out our channel. We have videos on things to do, day trips, date nights, all kinds of information for you to find about Olympia.
Yeah, this is coming from people who live here, man. We've been to all these businesses. So if you appreciate it, be sure to also like and subscribe.